poverty. That's what we're going to talk about today. I'm sure that when I said the word poverty, a certain image came into your head, probably of some slob or drunk, the real lowlifes of society. Now think of the first thing that comes to you when I say the word billionaire. You're probably thinking of a well-dressed individual, an entrepreneur, someone who works hard and contributes to society. Whether or not these titles are deserved is another story. See, I think that we've got it all wrong. I think that the real drains on the economy, the real slums of the earth, aren't the poor people trying to survive, but the greedy billionaires hoarding all of the world's wealth for their own selfish gain. I'm going to be addressing 4 main questions that relate towards the idea of poverty. How much is $1 billion? Is it possible to earn it ethically? How does society punish the poor? Why is it so difficult to escape poverty? What is redlining? How does it continue to disproportionately affect people of color and other minorities? How much is $1 billion? Is it possible to earn it ethically? Since we're on the topic of poverty, I wanted to first talk about billionaires. So many people love to idolize billionaires, but is that praise really deserved? Let's take a look. A lot of people truly underestimate just how much $1 billion really is. There's this whole idea that if you work really hard, then you too can become a billionaire. But is it really that easy? Say you make $2,000 an hour, $40 per week, 52 weeks per year. Hypothetically speaking, you save every penny and pay no taxes. It would take you 241 years to make $1 billion. If you want to figure out how long it would take you to become a billionaire, take 1 billion divided by 52, divide that by 40, and then divide it by your wage. Still think it's a reasonable goal? Now let's take a look at Jeff Bezos, the founder and CEO of Amazon. Bezos is currently the richest man alive today. His net worth is $182 billion, which sounds like a lot, but it's much more when you break it down. For example, this year, Bezos is making $8.99 billion a month, or $2.25 billion a week. In smaller terms, that's about $321 million a day, $13.4 million an hour, $222,884 a minute, and $3,715 a second. Do you still think billionaires deserve all that money? Some of you might be saying, but Caradwin, didn't he donate $98.5 million to charity last year? Yeah, that's true, and yeah, donating millions of dollars to charity is great, don't get me wrong, but $98.5 million is only 0.082% of his net worth. Say you make $50,000 a year. If you donated 0.82% of your income, you would only be donating $41. Doesn't sound as selfless now, does it? How does society punish the poor? The second question I wanted to address is how society punishes the poor. We don't treat them very well, which I don't think is right, considering they are some of the most vulnerable people in society. Here's an example of how poorly we treat the poor. Last year in December 2019, the Winnipeg Police Service removed and destroyed warming huts that were donated because they didn't have a permit. The warming huts were designed to help shelter people from the harsh winters we experience here in Manitoba. If you've ever experienced a Winnipeg winter, then you'll know just how cold it can get. People can die if they're exposed to the cold for long periods of time. And I don't know about you, but I'd rather have a warming hut being built without a permit than somebody needlessly dying. If we're on the topic of Winnipeg, back in June, the city announced that they were dismantling Tent City, which is a homeless camp behind the MMF, Manitoba Métis Federation, building near the Disraeli Bridge. One homeless man described Winnipeg as one of the toughest places to be homeless, compared to other cities that he's lived in, such as Calgary, Vancouver, and Toronto. I could rant on and on about the pure callousness of forcing these people out of the only place they can call a home, in the middle of a pandemic no less, but I digress. Another example is anti-homelessness legislation, which is another word for laws criminalizing homelessness behavior. It's not technically illegal to be homeless, but the law does find ways of punishing people for it. Like how some areas have loitering laws that prohibit people from remaining in a particular public place for a long period of time without any apparent reason. What if someone doesn't have an apparent reason? What if they're just homeless? And if someone is homeless, then where are they going to go? Why is it so difficult to escape poverty? Why it's so difficult to escape poverty is a very broad question. Let's look at some of the barriers they might face. If someone lives in an area with a lack of proper infrastructure, this would include good roads and public transportation, then it would give them less jobs/shopping opportunities since they wouldn't have transportation to those places. Many people who live in poverty don't have access to good schools/educations. The reason why is because a lot of schools are heavily funded by property taxes. The long-lasting effects of redlining can also play a factor in keeping people from leaving poverty. This is a root cause of redlining. If you're not sure what redlining is, don't worry, I'll be covering it next. Some other barriers that could keep someone from leaving the poverty line is that it's often a lot harder for them to save money. If they have a lack of money or water, then all of the money they have is going to go towards their basic needs. Sorry if I'm going too fast. I have a lot I want to cover in this section, and I want to at least try to keep this video under 10 minutes. Have you ever heard of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs? I'm sure you've talked about it at some point during your education, but let's quickly revisit it. To summarize, at the bottom there's physiological needs: food, water, air, warmth, rest, shelter, clothing. This is considered to be the most important, because without the basic requirements for survival, you can't really do anything else. The next level is safety needs: personal security, financial security, law and order, medical care, employment, police. Next, you have belongingness and love needs: intimacy, friends, affection, love and trust, acceptance. The fourth level is esteem needs: dignity, achievement, status, respect from others, desire for reputation. And then finally, self-actualization: achieving/realizing one's full potential, seeking personal growth and self-fulfillment. It's generally believed that in order to be a truly healthy and happy person, that you need to have all 5 needs met. However, someone who is stuck in poverty is unfortunately, for the most part, unable to move past physiological needs. How people treat and think of the poor also has an impact on remaining in poverty. Like how if you have a negative view of someone, then you're less likely to hire them. The only way to make money is by getting a job. If you can't get a job, then you can't get money. No money means you're stuck in poverty. A lot of jobs also usually expect some sort of dress code, and if you're homeless or in intense poverty, then it's harder to stay neat and clean, and you might also not have access to clean clothes. What is redlining? How does it continue to disproportionately affect people of color and other minorities? We've talked about how much $1 billion is, how society punishes the poor for being poor, and why it's so difficult to escape poverty. Now we are finally on to our last question: redlining. Back in the 1930s, loan programs were created to help people finance their homes. The government created color-coded maps to decide who got the loans. Green areas were good, red areas were bad. If you lived in the green neighborhoods, then it was super easy to get a loan. But if you lived in the red, nothing was available. This process became known as redlining. The reason why some areas were labeled green probably isn't too hard to figure out, considering it was the 1930s, but if you still don't understand, it was because they were white. In total, 98% of home loans through 1934 to 1968 were given to white families. The government didn't just allow these racist policies, in fact, they outright encouraged it. Even though the racist policies that early suburb developers first implemented are now illegal, today, more than 70 years later, suburbs are still less than 1% black. Now you're probably wondering, if people who were in the red neighborhoods before can now move to the green neighborhoods, what's stopping them? Well, you see, over time, the people in the green areas were able to gain and obtain wealth, meaning that they were then able to purchase bigger and better homes. All this new wealth attracted new businesses, which in turn caused property values to increase. Since the red areas were initially denied loans, they didn't get the same opportunities to gain and obtain wealth like the green areas did, keeping them trapped in poverty. So even though they can technically move, since it's no longer illegal to discriminate against race, most can't afford to, meaning these communities remain separated by race all these years later. Now, what about education? Even though their home lives are different, surely they get the same educational opportunities, right? Wrong. Schools are often separated by districts and are also largely funded by property taxes. If one area has higher property values, like the green neighborhoods, then they'll have more to spend on things like supplies, facilities, and teachers. Poorer areas with lower property values have a more limited budget and are often massively underfunded. This means they're often less likely to have qualified/experienced teachers and a lack of needed supplies, which can have a serious effect on a child's education. A poor education means they are less likely to succeed at a career, meaning they are unlikely to leave poverty, and the cycle begins all over again with the next generation. What you can do to help. Here are some ways you can help take action and fight the system. These are mostly my own opinions, so take with them what you will. Only use Amazon as a last resort if you absolutely can't find it anywhere else. Also, be skeptical of the praise billionaires get when donating to charities. Of course, it's great when people donate, but remember that a couple $1 million to you is worth pennies to them. Another thing you can do is educate people on just how much $1 billion is. Use the wage formula I previously mentioned in the first question to show people just how long it would take them to make $1 billion, because nobody needs that amount of money. And maybe if people realize just how much $1 billion really is, then they'd shut up about hardworking billionaires, which is probably the biggest oxymoron yet, and start directing their frustrations at them rather than the poor people who are just trying to survive. Yeah, the system's crap, I get that, but the people living on welfare who earn barely enough to survive aren't stealing anything from you. It's the higher-ups, the billionaires, that are the real thieves. Think more critically about how society and people in general treat the poor as a whole. There's that stereotype that all homeless people are lazy addicts who leech off the system, even though the real leeches are the billionaires who don't pay taxes, but it's not about them right now. Try to remember that homeless people are people too. Having a place to live shouldn't be the sole factor in determining whether or not someone has value. Everyone deserves to have food and water. Everyone deserves shelter from the cold. Start showing some more compassion towards the poor. Try donating to shelters and programs that help them. If you can afford to. If you can't afford to donate, then you shouldn't feel guilty. Remember that you can't pour someone water from an empty jug. Don't look down on the poor, and to the best of your abilities, try to encourage others to do the same. Many of them are just trying to survive and get through the day. In regards to the hierarchy of needs, most of us don't have to worry about our physiological or safety needs. We take that for granted and tend to unfairly judge others who don't have those same privileges. If you have the privilege of not having to worry about food or shelter, recognize it. When hearing stereotypes about people of color and minorities being thugs and criminals, try to remember that the reason why those communities in particular are heavily affected by poverty isn't because of their inherent worth ethic or morals, but rather because of the system in place that was designed to keep them from having the same opportunities as white people. I feel like racism plays a huge part in keeping people in poverty. The stereotypes that exist against them are designed to degrade and dehumanize them. The system that allowed all this to happen is still in effect. I believe that everyone is a little bit racist. Racism is so heavily ingrained into our society that most of us say and do racist things without even realizing it. I think that the only way to not be racist is to recognize that we are all slightly racist and to educate yourself. Listen to Black voices, listen to First Nations voices, listen to the people who are being oppressed. Then we can start making society a better place for everyone.